This is a regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Fox is recused from the first item. Ms. Goss will be seated. Victoria, you're seated on the first one, Frank. Okay. Fairview Country Club, number one.
Thank you. Chairman, while Mr. Coates gets set up, do we need the court reporter yet?
No.
Okay.
We're still in just the regular meeting. The court reporter, we'll need him in about 45 minutes.
And he's really looking forward to tonight, because nobody warned him.
Evening. I'm here on behalf of the Fairview Country Club, a club at 1241 King Street, and this application is by way of a subdivision application to permit the conveyance of a small portion of an adjacent property owned by the Convent of the Sacred Heart to the school. This area will give you an idea of the properties involved. King Street runs north-south that way. The Fairview Country Club I've outlined in white. Can you see that, Ms. Goss? Yes, thank you. The Convent of the Sacred Heart actually owns two parcels. One, the larger parcel of about 109 acres where the school is operated, and then a smaller parcel of about 9 acres that is, as you can see, separated by the Fairview Country Club. And the goal here is to allow a small piece of this 9-acre parcel to be conveyed to allow a very slight expansion of the fifth tee, which already exists there. Here's a better picture of that 9-acre piece. You look troubled, Mr. Maitland, already.
Sorry.
So early in the evening.
I got to get my game face on.
Okay. I thought that was it. Anyway, here's the 9 acres, a topographical map. Here is probably a better way to look at it, the same way that I showed you on the aerial. The club is over here. The 9 acres here. The piece that I marked in yellow is the 0.8 acres that is to be conveyed to the club. And the purpose of that, if you looked at this topo, which we filed, the fifth tee of the club kind of encroaches slightly into that area. This will allow a slight improvement to that tee. We've appeared before the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special exception to allow this parcel, if it's approved, to have the club special exception attached to it. Interestingly enough, this piece that still is owned by the Convent of Sacred Heart was kind of landlocked many years ago, and it really is, it should be kind of a nature preserve because it's surrounded on both sides by land owned by the Nature Conservancy, and I understand from the Convent of Sacred Heart that their intention is to donate it to the Land Trust, but before they did, in light of a long and very happy relationship with the club, they've agreed to make this conveyance. We've submitted deed histories for both parcels, and in my view, this transaction does not constitute a subdivision, but merely a lot line revision.
If you could put the map up that shows the actual dimension, no, that's, if you could put the map up that shows the map that's going to be signed. Well, the one for signature.
I don't have that with me, Mr. What would you like to say?
It's just, normally when we get these, the line here that is the existing line is shown in a dotted line because that will no longer.
Correct.
This acreage up here is the existing acreage of Fairview, and once this gets conveyed, this number should be larger because this number down here is already smaller, as if it's
The correct numbers are in our narrative that we submitted.
I think they probably are, but it would be nice if they
We'll-
were
we'll-
on the map.
We'll make the map conform to the actual facts as recited in our narrative.
And further, would you then also on this map in the notes section show the zoning of approval, or zoning board of appeals
Absolutely.
approval? That's all I have.
Now, you mentioned that the existing property is landlocked, but
It
there's
is.
that easement from the Sacred Heart property over the Fairview Country Club to get there. Is that in any way considered access beyond, I mean, it obviously doesn't have, it is landlocked. I mean, the easement. I
It's worse than that, actually. When this landlocked situation was created, it was created by virtue of this property, a 65-acre parcel, which had been owned by the Convent of Sacred Heart, being conveyed to the club. And in that conveyance, the Convent of Sacred Heart reserved a 15-foot right-of-way over this property and immediately adjacent to property now of Bernard Gimble. Bernard Gimble's property is, the chieftain's property, and the Gimble property was right over here, so if you were to lay out that 15-foot right-of-way, and it's pretty unspecific, it would go right along here, but it would also go through a pond. So it's not something that really has ever been used, and I think that will be corrected as a subsequent to this, before this parcel is given away.
And when was that happened?
1965.
Oh. So that's interesting, because that was at a time when you would think that they wouldn't have created the landlocked piece. I mean, it wasn't a subdivision.
I was not representing the convent at that time, or the club.
You
I
weren't
was a child.
You weren't even born yet.
And is there any access from the other side?
No.
No. It is landlocked, I think.
No, except through the other land of the convent.
Right. So this lot line revision isn't in any way making the condition worse?
It's not changing the situation at all.
Any other comments from the commission?
I will note that.
Any comments from the public?
So later on, make sure I hear you.
Then I'll have a motion.
They don't have the special exception yet.
Yes, they do.
they do?
Yes, ZBA granted it. Yes.
Okay. I hereby move that this is, sorry. As regards the transfer of .818 acres, I hereby move that this is neither a subdivision nor a re-subdivision, and that, and we note that the DEP has expressed no concerns regarding this, that the Conservation Department applauds maintaining the high-quality woodland here, and that the applicant has received a special exception approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And it also that the landlocked piece was created in 1965, and that this change in the lot line is not worsening the nonconformity. And finally, that the applicant shall file a correction on the map for the dotted line,
We're just showing the line that's being eliminated.
and shall note the date and receipt of the ZBA special exception approval
And
on the
shall
map.
have, and shall also show the correct acreages after the transfer of the property.
And show correct acreages. And
And
that's
did-
the motion.
And did
Yeah.
you want the ZBA decision to be noted on the map?
Yes, I
Yes.
did.
Okay.
I think she said that.
Sorry.
I said that.
I remember you said that it was there.
Did, yeah.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 2,
Who's the second thing? The lot line, and show,
BH and GK Real Estate LLC for a final site plan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Tom Hegney on behalf of the applicant. This is an application to take an existing building which has commercial on the first floor and a residential unit above, and use the first floor only as a preschool program for children 3 and under as part of the program that is run at the Chabad, which is just to the east, or excuse me, west of this property at 75 Mason Street. The Chabad has been operating a preschool at 75 Mason since 2003. And this
Sorry, just wait, Andy's coming in. Sorry.
No, he can hear what's going on.
Okay.
He just has to listen and walk at the same time, and I'm sure he can do that.
I'm sure he can as well.
You know, it's not a qualification for getting on planning and zoning.
It is a plus, though. I'm sure Mr. Fox is up to speed on this. This portion of the preschool has been operated out of the YMCA the last couple of years, and they have an opportunity to operate it here at this building. There are 5 parking spaces in the back, and there would be a maximum of 16 children, which would be part of the program. My client has met with the State Health Department, and they have walked through the space and has actually filed a change, because this would not be a new program. It would be the same program in a different location, and has filed that with the state, and we've provided a copy to staff. I know a question came up at the briefing yesterday about a condition that this would only be approved as long as it is operated in conjunction with the preschool program at the Chabad. That is an acceptable condition. There's no intention of having another organization operate the preschool out of here. In order to provide for adequate drop-off and pickup, we are staggering the drop-off and pickup at 15-minute to 30-minute intervals, so that the children would only be coming at the maximum 4 at a time, starting at 8 a.m., then again at 8:30, 9, and 9:15. There's a total of 4 staff, and 2 of them, they come in 2 vehicles. So there will be ample parking and ample area to drop off and pick up.
There are how many, 5 parking spaces there now?
Correct.
And one of them is assigned to the residential unit?
Correct.
So that leaves 4.
That happens to be occupied currently by a staff member at the Chabad.
The problem is, in your narrative, or in the, not your narrative, but the staff narrative, it was indicated that you know, or you indicated there's room on the site to provide another parking space, or at least a drop-off space if...
Well, we did look at that. There is a portion here. It does slope up toward the dwelling. And we thought that there was adequate parking in the rear so that that did not need to happen. It wouldn't be in keeping with the other homes and buildings along Lincoln Avenue, and we thought we could do it without it. The other thing I should mention is currently 5 of the children that would be going to this program also have siblings that are in the program with the older children. And although that doesn't necessarily carry forward year to year, Mrs. Darren, who's the director of the program, has indicated that that's been pretty consistent over the years, that there have been a significant number of siblings in the younger program with older brothers and sisters.
A car has to drive in, and then does the parent take the child in, or does someone from the daycare
No, the child is brought in by the parent.
by the parent? So the car is parked, the parent takes the child in, and then in that 15-minute slice, there's 4 other cars coming in?
Well, actually, it's only the last one where it's 15 minutes. The rest are half an hour in between.
Oh, I thought there was
So
only-
it's 8, 8:30, 9, and 9:15.
Okay. So you have a half-hour
That's
And the-
4 children being dropped off within half an hour.
And the pickup?
The same thing in
It's the
reverse.
same in reverse, right?
So there's going to be, I mean, because somebody will pull in, park, and then stop, the car will have to be parked, child taken inside, back into the car, a Y turn, or, you know, if there's a parking available, I guess you can back into it and then drive out.
Yes, and there's ample back-out area. As the plan shows, there's 31 feet from the back of the space to the building.
Okay.
So there's plenty of maneuverability there. Rabbi Darren and Mrs. Darren are here to answer any questions if you
Just
have them.
just one final thing for me, anyway, and that is the current uses in the building will remain the same. I don't know if there's any use in the attic or not. Not the current use of the first floor, I know is changing, but the second floor will remain an apartment.
It's going to remain an apartment, yes.
Attic is nothing but storage.
I believe it is.
Well, there's no
It's
habitation.
just part of whatever's
And the
upstairs.
basement, again, is just storage, or is there a facility down there or
No,
anything?
there's nothing
Just
that down
storage.
there, yes.
Okay.
Can we clarify, is it storage in the attic?
So it's 2 rooms in the attic.
Okay, but
No kitchen or anything?
No, it's just one apartment above the space.
Oh, so the second floor apartment is also in the attic?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
that's
it's one
tied in with the
apartment
attic.
that's the second
It's just
and
one
the-
apartment
okay.
with space in the attic.
Okay.
And did we get the square footage of the preschool on the first floor?
I think it's somewhere around.
that doesn't seem right. 15 by 15? Not even 230 square feet, that doesn't sound right.
Around
That's like 10 by
230 square
20?
feet.
Pretty close, it's not very big, because the only thing that's being, let me get grandma's plans.
So will this
The only
site,
thing
I
that's
told the
being done-
architects they didn't need to come this evening because there wouldn't be any questions for them.
But the only thing that appears on the drawing to be done is the addition of an ADA bathroom.
Correct, and there's one partition that would be removed other than
Yeah,
that.
there's a fill-in and a couple of add partitions, but other than that, it remains,
No, that's it. There's
yeah, so that's
very
the
little
only
to be done,
change.
which we're hoping will occur in August so that we can start the program in September.
so the playground space and whatever it will be shared with the other site? I mean, they're kind of interchangeable in that way? or-
Yes, similar to how the staggering is done for drop-off, they will stagger the use of the playground at 75, and they would be staggering it in half-hour intervals.
And what's the status of your state application?
The state has received a change application, which we provided to staff, and they've indicated that as soon as we receive this approval and the building permit, we would be approved by the state as well.
Okay, and then.
The fire marshal has also walked through the space.
Okay, I was just going to say, that was my next question. So they have to have the push doors and all of that stuff?
Yeah, we want, before even moving ahead with it, we wanted both the state and the fire marshal to review it to make sure that it would be adequate for the program.
So assuming the commission moves this forward, then you would get your state approval prior to the zoning permit sign-off, correct?
No,
How does-
we would need to get the building permit first, so it would be state approval prior to certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
Any comments from the commission?
Mr. Hegney, in the narrative, it was mentioned that the staff will carpool?
Correct, that's why they're, out of the 4 staff members, there will only be 2 vehicles.
Okay, and then the drop-off is staggered, pickup is staggered.
Correct.
What happens when that doesn't happen? To some one of the staff
And then
members?
Mrs. Darren has a conversation with the parents of that particular child and emphasizes that these rules are in place for a reason and that they must be adhered to.
Yeah, that's always the challenge.
Mrs. Darren is up to the challenge.
Okay.
And the same with staff. I mean, it's great to assume that they'll carpool all the time, but that one day that they don't, what's could be provided for the staff member who brings their own car?
It's not something that has happened in the past with the staff that we have at 75 Mason Street, and that's been going on for the last 14 years, and it's worked well. And we're anticipating that that same process will be filed going forward.
So as part of it, we'll actually put in the drop-off times, the pickup times, and that the staff will carpool.
Correct. Oh, yes, no, that we want, those are conditions that we are imposing on ourselves and that we would accept as a condition of approval.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public?
Yes.
Have my 3 and my 5-year-old back there, just to warn you. My name is Tiffany Costanzo. I live at 14 Lincoln Avenue, which is the property directly next door. We've lived there for 4 years as renters, but about 3 weeks ago bought the property. So I thought it would be good to come in and just talk about our concern, and there's a few of our neighbors here, about the increased traffic that we already have on Lincoln Avenue. And I'm worried about, I mean, we've already had experiences on their Sunday programs with parents who block our driveway, who pull in, use it, and I've had to ask them to leave. And I'm going to be bringing him to kindergarten now, and I'm going to be leaving the house while these parents are also going to be dropping off their kids. And there's one parking lot in front, like one parking space in front that's permit only, and then there's the 2 driveways. And I'm concerned that I can see that parking lot as an office now, and it can fit maybe 6 cars, and turning around is even a problem. So I'm worried about people coming in a, Suburban or something. I mean, I don't think they can really physically get around that parking spot. So that's kind of my main concern, is even if it's staggered, like you said, are parents really going to adhere to that? They've got to pick up another child, they have got to do it early one day, and if there's 13 kids and 13 parents, there's a lot of excuses that could happen over time. Sorry. So that's my main concern. And then we also have the Wellness Center, which is across the street now,
Yes.
which I wasn't involved in at the time, but I do notice that there are more parents lingering on the street, waiting for their child. I've almost backed into them, even though they shouldn't be on that side of the street, but I'm not used to it, so I'm like, oh. So I'm worried that we have the preschool, then the Wellness Center, and then the Chabad Center, and I'm just afraid that our street is just going to end up being a line of cars.
Yes.
So that would be kind of my concern, is I don't know how they can address it better. I think that they've tried, but I don't know if that it's actually built for that kind of purpose, personally. You want to say anything?
I'm Barbara Olszewski.
Come up to the microphone, please.
Yeah.
I'm the next door neighbor, and I think the whole thing is portrayed as just a minor change and maybe location, but really the original Chabad Center is on Mason Street versus
Right, the
this
75
all of a sudden
Mason.
is moving towards Lincoln Avenue,
Right.
which is a fully residential place, and the office that was there before was more like it was perceived as like a lawyer's office or so, even less, because I don't think he had any clients coming in and anything going on. It was just gentlemen working there, maybe with an assistant. And now, all of a sudden, it's becoming not a residential thing. And the parking has been always a problem on Lincoln Avenue. It's always, we were parking, especially tight planning parking, because we couldn't fit all our cars that were on the street. We were parking close to driveways. We had discussions with police officers. I had personally a discussion with the police.
Direct the microphone.
Parking
Thank you.
police, just explaining that we have to park close to driveways because otherwise we are not going to fit our cars. So that has been always an issue. At this moment, 2 houses are vacant, are for sale on the avenue. So it may seem like it's not so bad, but just wait until families move in, and all of a sudden it's going to, I mean, not bad in the meaning that you come in and you can park, but most of the time. But 2 houses, which are like 2 houses apart from the house we are talking about, are for sale now. But still, when you see it, parking is allowed only on one side of the street. And in most houses nearby, it's just one car in front of the house. And the houses are really close. So we are talking about one of these houses taken over by a little nursery school, which is, of course, going to be like a shock for the neighborhood that all of a sudden what's happening on the corner is a busy, I understand, center, and sometimes they park in front of our houses, sometimes not, but it's not a regular busy situation. And like Tiffany has mentioned, the traffic gets blocked on the peak hours because Mason Avenue is busy. Cars cannot enter Mason Avenue, so they line up and everything. So it's definitely not as simple that they move to the next building, because they are moving to next street, basically taking over a residential house. That's how I see it.
Just so you know, this piece of property is zoned as a business zone.
It is a business.
It is not a residential property.
But business and school, it's also, if it was an office like it was before, it's a different
The
situation.
use they're asking for is a permitted use in this particular zone, so
Oh, well.
just, so
Anyway.
you might not have known that.
No, I have not known that the school would be permitted.
No, but yes, well, it is a business zone,
In this
yeah.
type of, in this building. So anyway, my concerns are parking and traffic.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public? Any commissioners? I didn't ask if any commissioners had any more comments. No?
I have a comment, but wait, I think I might just make it tag.
As you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, this is in the CGB zone. Private schools are a permitted use in the zone. We provide for adequate parking for both staff and for the residents, and have staggered the drop-off so that there is adequate pull-in space for parents to take their child into the building and then leave.
I didn't comment this to the people who spoke, but we did check and make sure and ask for, I guess Marissa, I had asked her to make sure that there were no complaints to the zoning enforcement officer on the existing operations or calls to the police, if there had been any accident reports, and I didn't get any information back on that, so I assume
She, and we're talking about Marisa Anastasia, the planner. who was
staff,
on
the planner who
right.
did the staff report.
And she had called the police department, the parking director, I thought there was one other person.
The CEO.
Oh, the zoning,
I-
thank you, yeah,
yeah.
the CEO, and confirm that there had been no issuance of complaints.
So, in the existing operation, there have been no complaints that were on record anyway. And so that's one thing for the neighbors to be aware of, that if there's an issue, you've got to get it on record, because otherwise there's no evidence. But, when you look back, we approved that dance studio in Cuscob at the old Joyce van, the movers. And what has worked super well is that the person who runs it makes sure the moms obey. They follow the rules. And she gets out there and makes sure they follow the rules. And there's peace in the neighborhood, and the neighborhood came out massively to protest us doing it. We took a risk, and it has worked because the school itself makes sure that people follow the rules. And I think that's what I would ask your applicant. You said that they are up to the task to make sure that they continue to be a good neighbor and that they follow this process that you've laid out here. Because we're not going to be able to catch people before the fact, but I can't believe how well that dance studio has worked because the owner has taken it upon themselves to enforce it.
And Mrs. Darren, as the director of the program,
We'll make sure.
will follow through as well.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that.
She's nodding as
gonna
well
hold
as
him
Rabbi
responsible.
Darren nodding yes.
Anything else?
No, just request your approval.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion?
I hereby move approval of the final site plan to renovate the first floor of this building and convert from office use to a preschool at 6 Lincoln Avenue. In so doing, we note that the other building uses will be the same, that the applicant shall provide the exact square footage of the preschool area, which has been estimated at about 230 square feet. 16 children shall be attending. The applicant has met with the State Health Department, and since this is an extension of an existing license, the applicant shall obtain state approval prior to its certificate of occupancy. The applicant has indicated, has represented it will require staggered drop-off and pickup times. The drop-off times will be 8, 8:30, 9, and 9:15. In addition, playground use at 75 Mason Street will also be staggered. The applicant is providing 5 parking spaces for this use, and the staff shall carpool and will only need 2 spaces. We also note that the sewer department has some issues that need to be addressed in the process of this application. The commission has one condition on this approval, and that is that the preschool should only operate as part of the Chabad operation, shall always be part of Chabad and shall not be outsourced.
Up to 16, or no more than 16.
I think I said that, but yes, 16 children, no more than 16 children.
Maximum is 16.
Yeah, I know, but they said, although the tax card says that the first floor is 818 feet, that the part they're converting, they said was only 230.
I thought you were saying you wanted the square footage for the whole school.
No, it's 230 that they weren't sure about, that they were going to confirm for us.
Okay.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
I forgot to say the part about we'll hold Mr. Hegney's feet to the fire. Because we see you, Mr. Hegney.
Item number 3.
I just would like to make a quick announcement that if anybody is uncomfortable standing, you can go up to the cone room where you can watch this live on TV, and when your application that you want to speak on, or you want to watch live, you can come down. Obviously, you're welcome to stay here, but if you'd be more comfortable seated, you can do that upstairs in the cone room and come down when you're ready.
Or they can sit on the floor.
Or sit on the floor, too, whatever you're
Yeah,
comfortable
feel
with.
free to sit.
Until the fire marshal throws them.
We do have the fire marshal here, so he'll let us know when it's too much in the room.
Is he counting?
Yeah.
He's here. Item number 3, 1073 King Street.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Casey O'Donnell for the applicant. I'm going to attempt to do this rather quickly. I know that you have a long agenda. I'm going to just start by handing out a couple of letters that I was privileged to receive that were in support of the application. The original letters I'll hand to Ms. DeLuca, and the remaining I'll ask that they distribute down to you. I'd like to see if I can succinctly move through the comments and the concerns that I understood from the staff report and that I heard discussed at the briefing, and then I can respond to any questions. However, if you'd prefer to ask questions, I can respond to those.
It's 2 pages.
Okay. So since our last time we met, we resubmitted engineering drawings to DPW. They addressed Scott's, it seemed to meet Scott's satisfaction. He's issued a resubmit prior to building permit approval. If you have specific questions on the site plan or engineering, then we have Craig and Derek from Rocco's office, DeAndrea's office, to respond to those.
As I understand it, you are only talking to the
Site
change of
plan.
use. You're
No, the
only
site
talking to
plan.
the site plan right now.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
You might want to go over the traffic that you just
Okay.
give us this afternoon and what it means.
Absolutely. So just as a segue into that, at the last meeting, we also discussed whether the fire marshal would have concerns with our site design, and I met with Rob Natal on July 24th. He had no objection to either the site plan or the architectural plans. He was pleased with the 360-degree access. Basically, his only request that we maintain is that there are not tall plantings located immediately lining the driveways or the building to provide maneuverability for equipment and fire personnel.
Did you ever send us a copy of that comment?
He did not write formal comments. We had a meeting, and I discussed with him during our meeting what I would represent tonight, and he did not object to that, and so I'm comfortable being on the record with that. Tie-in bond submitted, and much to my chagrin, I think I inadvertently failed to attach it to an email to Katie 3 times. I believe I was possibly successful today. So just to summarize that, they did a traffic assessment, and they found exceptional sight distances at both driveways, and based on the anticipated peak business, concluded that there would not be a significant traffic impact on the surrounding roads. So Craig Gans is here to discuss that if you have specific questions or in more detail.
No, just keep going.
Okay.
Maybe
All
some
right.
of the other commissioners do. I'm
Okay.
okay with the study.
And then so as far as architecture, so last time we were here, since then, we visited the ARC on July 17th. At the July 17th ARC hearing, you could see the updated rendering. Tim Peck, the architect, is also here to address specific concerns. Generally speaking, the ARC was satisfied with the building design. They said they did not need to see those plans again. However, as this commission did, they did have an opinion on our landscape plan and on our lighting plan. I do have copies of those that we're going to resubmit to ARC with me tonight. If you'd like to see them, it'd be my pleasure to hand them in. I believe that they meet the code requirement, the building zone regulation requirements. They generally, so for landscape, they said, please reduce the variety of planning and provide details on the installed size. Our proposed plans include both of those details, and they meet that. As far as lighting goes, they asked us to raise the parking light poles to 6 feet. And our proposed lighting plan, we have raised them to 6 feet, and again, it's in compliance with the building zone regulations. They wanted us to reduce some of the bollards. The design of those 2 fixtures, they liked it. They thought they basically, they're dark sky compliant, but in addition, they were contemporary, and they seemed to sort of, they said, melt into the landscape. However, they did have a comment on our wall pack fixtures, and they thought that that was too contemporary, and we have, and I have tonight if you want to see it, an alternate proposed more traditional wall pack light. And the final thing is Mr. Doyle requested that we provide paving samples. So in consultation with Tim and our site guy, we're trying to see how we can meet that request. So ARC meets next on September 13th. And of course, that's beyond the maximum extension for the site plan approval. On the basis that landscaping and lighting seem to be their primary concerns, we'd ask that you allow us to, you approve the application and allow us to be subject to having positive commentary from ARC on our landscaping and site plans.
Katie, do you have any problem reviewing that? No. Okay.
Finally, there was some discussion of site plan approval conditions, and I talked with zoning enforcement officer as well as Katie today, and I spoke with my clients last night and this morning. We have no objection accepting a condition that says that a change of use, even a change of use within a use group, would return to the Planning and Zoning Commission for site plan approval. We think it's appropriate based on the totality. So we'd be willing to accept that. In discussions with Katie, I voiced my objection, and to Jody, and he concurred that a condition that was based on the tenancy would be difficult to enforce and I think amorphous to define. So for those reasons, we're resistant to a condition of that nature.
I think some of those concerns were before we had the traffic survey that you've given us. So I think at least that was, I think those are sort of ameliorated.
Okay. Are there other questions? And then I'll jump out of the way and I can If there's any members of the public here to speak, we can allow them to
Questions?
speak, and then I just reserve a few minutes to respond.
See the wall pack?
Yes.
Great. Why don't you continue reading it? Thank you.
So the fixtures, I've submitted a copy, both for the record and to Mr. McRae, a lumens plan that I believe is compliant with the zoning regulations, as well as a schedule of fixtures that we propose to use. And then you'll note that the fixtures that we have proposed are all dark sky compliant, are fully shielded, will not be visible, will have no visible light source.
Any other questions? Questions? Any questions from the public? Then we'll, oh, is the
I
one?
saw at least one question. Might have been my imagination.
Could you just take your photograph down?
Yes, I didn't
Then
see
I can
anybody.
see if anybody's, okay, I don't see anybody coming for it. Okay, then we'll close this.
Thank you.
And we will not, normally we would decide this now, but since we have to decide the zone change, this will be, thought we could squeeze you in.
I
No
beg
way.
your reconsider. Okay, thank you.
It's
So I'll
7:14, we're
come
going to
back-
start the public hearing, so I'm
Okay,
sorry.
I'll come back tonight in
Enjoy.
a couple hours.
That's right, watch us.
Don't come back. Trust us and don't come back.
Coffee and.
Starbucks will be closed.
Can we, if they, on the use here, can we say something about it not being like a Starbucks? On that 1073?
Well, we
Because
don't know
the
what that's going to
tenant-
be. They
It's a
haven't told us.
retail food.
Yeah, so I think that's Starbucks, but
I mean, that it not be high turnover retail food? Can we say that?
say whatever we want.
Okay. I'm going to put that in for us to talk about.
It is.
Okay,
It is now 7:15, we're opening the public hearing.
which is the first time we've ever been on time in history.
I know. Item number 4, the J&J Greenwich.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Tom Hegney on behalf of the applicant. We were here in June, and at that hearing, there were a fair number of comments on how we ended up getting where we are, and that in the opinion of many of the people who spoke, that the building was too large and out of character with the neighborhood. I want to just take a few brief minutes and go through how we actually got where we are, because I think it's important. This all started about 10 years ago, and about now you're going to be starting your plan of conservation development for 2019. The one for 2009 was started in 2007. There were 23 public meetings that this commission held from September of 2007 to May of 2009. It was then approved by this commission and sent to the RTM for its ratification. The RTM ratified the Plan of Conservation Development on May 12th, 2009. Part of the action plan that was part of that Plan of Conservation Development was to encourage moderate and affordable housing in town, and recommended revising 6110G to determine what incentives would be available to assist in adding moderate income housing, and encouraged the commission to look at places where there was mass transit available. Pursuant to the Plan of Conservation and Development, the Board of Selectmen appointed a Housing Task Force Committee, and they met from January of 2010 to January 2012. They had 44 meetings that were open to the public and developed particular recommendations, which later became a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, which then appointed the Community Development Partnership. This was a group made up of prominent citizens that met from October of 2012 to June of 2014. They drafted a specific change to 6110G, the moderate income housing regulation, and presented that to you in June of 2014. That was a very extensive plan, and it included such things as establishing a fund to deposit money into to encourage and support affordable housing and moderate income housing in town. I think it's fair to say that the Commission in 2014 thought that although the Community Development Partnership had worked very hard on this and diligently, that they were a little bit more aggressive, I should say, than the Commission thought was warranted to encourage this type of moderate income development. And you spent a year reviewing that and then held public hearings on a modification to 6110G. And that occurred in the spring of 2015. And then you conducted a public hearing and voted on the regulation as it exists, except for some minor modifications, in June of 2015. First plan that my clients actually submitted to you was in 2009. And we've had a number of redesigns over the years. There was another plan submitted in 2013. What my clients have done is watched what the various boards, commissions, and committees that have been working toward moderate income housing incentives have been doing. And it's really something that has coincided together with the work that has been done really over the last 8 years since the Plan of Conservation and Development was adopted and ratified by the RTM. So this has been very much an open, community-driven process to develop these regulations for a need that has been recognized in town for many years and was a specific action item in the Plan of Conservation and Development in 2009. And when we submitted this plan about a year ago, we were cognizant of the changes that had been made. We thought that there should be one additional change, and that was to make it a 4-story rather than a 3.5-story building for moderate income dwellings in the LB and LBR. And the Commission was clear that that was not acceptable and that we needed to redesign the building to meet the 3.5-story requirement that is currently in the regulation. And we revised the plan, brought that to you in December of last year, and you approved it on a preliminary basis with 16 conditions, which we have addressed at the last meeting point by point. Given the concerns that were expressed about the size of the building, we looked at what would happen if we just took the residential part of it off and went with the, as of right, 23,000 square feet of office and retail use. The parking requirement would basically remain the same because we have 17 parking spaces associated with the one-bedroom apartments, but we need 115 parking spaces to meet the requirement for the commercial, both retail and office space. So the footprint of the building would remain the same. The garage that we need to provide the parking which is needed would remain the same. The site wouldn't really change at all. And I'm going to ask Mr. Rydberg to go through the plans with you a little later, but we've looked to design this building so that as it gets additional stories in the half-story, that we are stepping it back. So as the eye looks at it, it's recessed, particularly the half-story, which is set quite a bit back from the front of the building. The other thing that came up as part of the meeting in June was a request to review the parking counts. And we had our traffic engineer review those, and you've also received comments from your traffic consultant. I'd like to ask Craig Yanis, our traffic engineer, to go over that with you briefly, and also to describe what the difference in parking counts would be if it was just a commercial building rather than a mixed use with residential. Craig?
All right. For the record, Craig Yanis, project engineer at Ty and Bond. It's all the way in the back. Licensed engineer and professional traffic operations engineer. As Tom mentioned, last hearing we heard concerns over the traffic volume data. So I just want to provide the following points as justification for those volumes. Traffic counts were conducted on the following days, representing average weekday and Saturday traffic conditions. Tuesday, February 2nd, 2016. Wednesday, February 3rd, 2016, Saturday, February 6th, 2016, and Thursday, February 18th, 2016. Town of Greenwich Public School vacation was held Monday, February 8th through February 12th, and President's Day was on February 15th, 2016. Therefore, the traffic counts did not occur on a day during the school vacation or on a federal holiday. The existing traffic counts showed that the weekday afternoon peak hour was the critical peak hour at the intersection, with 2,075 cars traveling through the intersection in 2016 versus 1978 for the Saturday peak hour. Therefore, the weekday afternoon peak hour would control as the maximum potential peak hour, and we saw that in the analysis results. The traffic study, including the traffic counts, was submitted in June 2016 and has been reviewed by the Greenwich Planning and Zoning Department, Department of Public Works, and the town's traffic consultant Beta Group. No requests for additional counts were made, nor was the accuracy of any traffic volume data brought into question. In addition to the reviews of all the submitted documentation, 2 meetings were held with the town planning and zoning and Department of Public Works staff, along with Beta, to discuss the impacts of the project, and Beta commented that the volumes were acceptable. Traffic impact analysis assesses the relative impact of the proposed development on the roadway system. Additional traffic counts and potential increase of these existing traffic volumes would also increase the background as well as the combined traffic volumes. When we're looking at the impact analysis, we compare the background to the combined. But the thing that doesn't change would be the proposed trip generation of the site, which will not change irregardless of the new traffic counts. So comparing the two analyses together, we'll be simply adding that same amount of traffic, resulting in a similar impact to what we saw in our traffic report. As detailed in the preliminary and final site plan process, we are suggesting that the maximum potential improvement to the intersection within the control of the applicant. As detailed at the previous public hearing, significant improvements via widening would require property easements, and taking is not in control of the applicant. The applicant has proposed the addition of Sheep Hill Road southbound advanced left turn phase, along with the improvements to facilitate future conversion of the intersection to concurrent pedestrian phasing. And that was requested by Department of Public Works staff and Beta Group. The recommended improvements result in significant improvements under the combined conditions when you compare them to the existing conditions. The significant traffic generation of the proposed project is a resultant of the by right, or as of right, 23,040 square feet of retail and commercial space. I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. Based upon these reasons, the volume data utilized in the preliminary and final site plan approval process represent representable traffic volumes for the peak hours Therefore, no additional traffic count should be necessary or required. The traffic consultant, the town's traffic consultant, Beta Group, agreed with this assessment, reiterating several of the points presented in our letter, and their response is included in the staff report. So in terms of the second item, talking about the